Welcome to number, what is it, 75, is it? 70 something. Uh, and as always, we got a fun-packed afternoon, evening, morning for you in the order of Nick and then Derek and then Mike. But before that, the parish announcements. Our next meeting is 18th. The next meeting is our conference, of course, in Gloucester, 18th of October. Now is the time to start booking for it because we don't people leave it to the last minute. We don't know how many biscuits to buy. If you don't book early, you don't get a biscuit. All right, that's the rule. Then 16th of November is our next meeting like this, and we have 3 speakers for that already, which is unheard of. And then 7th of December is the last of our Zoom meetings for this year. We do have vacant slot if anybody wants to do something. Doesn't have to be Christmas themed, but it would be nice if it was, or New Year themed. That's 7th of December. Going into next year, we've got, before that, let's give a plug for the EFTSS Tunes Conference, which is the 9th of November, if I remember rightly, the weekend of the 9th of November. Julia will tell me if it's not true. Go to their website if you want to book for that. I don't know how hybrid that is. It's possible that you might be able to dial in. I'm not sure. But go to EFTA's website to check on that. And into next year, we have a date now for our Broadside Day in Manchester, 14th of February. And no, not Manchester, Sheffield. Sheffield for the Broadside Day. And our conference on the 18th of April is in Manchester. That one is in Manchester. And that's on women and folk song, or folk song and women, or the other way around. Don't forget, if you're not members of whoever we are, TSF, if you join, then you get the newsletter and you get all this information for free in your mailboxes. And if you've got news that you want to spread around the group, please do contact Richard through the website, if you like, to put things in the newsletter. So I think that's everything. Martin's not telling me to do something else, so that's good. We're going to start then with Nick. Nick Dow is going to give us a talk about Collinson, the collector, and BBC man. Hello, Nick.
Indeed, hello. Yes, indeed. This is work ongoing, so I can tell you what I've found so far. Francis James Montgomery Collinson, to be absolutely precise with you, 1898 to 1984. For reasons of brevity, I'm not going to go through all of his achievements as a musician, but I will say that he was a trained musician and worked in musical theatre and was a good friend of Noel Coward, and also the producer Francis Dillon, who had quite an effect upon him. And is mostly taped and is available to listen to, and some of his lectures as well. However, we're concentrating here on his English collection, which began in fact in 1941. And I mentioned before we started George Frampton, so I'm actually going to quote him in his recounting of yet another horticultural light bulb moment, which will be very familiar to us. That is a singing gardener who inspired Collinson. According to the story, it goes that Francis Dillon heard his gardener, who was outside at work, well, he wouldn't be inside, would he, singing the blackbird. And Collinson was summoned, and the idea of using the singer on Country magazine was quickly established. Well, I better tell you what country magazine is. I know a lot of you know already, but it was a BBC output, really heading under the heading of nostalgia, I think, which started in 1941 and ran for 12 years. At that time, there was a big market for anything nostalgic. We were in the middle of a war, as I don't need to tell you. So writers like Dennis Pitchford and also Robert Gibbons were very popular. Their books were made available to troops, and it's the sort of book I guess you wanted to read if you were being shot at in Torbrook or bombed in Normandy or anything like that, and you were actually able to have some time off. You wanted to turn your attention to Blighty. And so they were very sort of popular books at the time, and I think the country magazine was started with that in mind by a group of BBC producers who referred to themselves as the Brains Trust. Some people might say that we could use a few brains at the BBC now, but that's a different talk, so I'll move on from that. Whether it was accurate that Collinson was, or a romanticised version of Collinson's activities as regards folk song collecting, I don't know. But in actual fact, gardeners notwithstanding, he collected his first folk song in 1941, and he is by our reckoning, that's myself and the people before you arrived at this meeting, the second collector to have gone and visited Harry Cox, the first being Jack Moran, and he collected a number of songs from Harry Cox and also from Jim Copper as well. And those songs and all the other songs in the English collection were done with pen and ink. And he's been described as the last of the pen and ink collectors. I don't know if that's true or not, but it looks like it probably is true. Gardeners, he had a bit of luck with gardeners. Noel Coward, who he knew through the shared involvement in the musical theatre. He lived at Aldington, and Collinson noted several songs from Coward's gardeners. They were John and Ted Lancefield, and as well as two other singers in the village. So he started locally. He was living in Bethersden in Kent. That's near Ashford, as I understand, and he started collecting locally to have quite a lot of success. Well, I'm going to actually use his own words to tell you how he collected songs. Collinson says that, "I find to get hold of the old country songs, you have to approach the task as a countryman yourself. For if the country folk get the impression that you are arty, they shut up like a knife." But the more revealing comments are here, actually. He goes on to say, "The real songs of the countryside," what they are I do not know, "are full-blooded and robust. Many people are shy of singing a song to a stranger straight off, and I don't ask them to do it. What I generally do is ask them to give me the words, and in doing this they're almost certain to come up to a line which they can't quite remember, and then instinctively they start to hum the tune to help their memory over a difficult bit. And once a man begins to hum a tune of his free will, you will find the ice is broken and he won't mind singing the rest to you." Personally, I haven't found that at all. Most of the singers I've collected from have been only too willing to sing right there and then. In fact, one abandoned his lunch to sing to me, which is over and above the call of duty. Anyway, let's take a look at the collection itself. There are 342 entries, and they are completely out of any order, shoved in 6 boxes. And not all of them, I hasten to add, are folk songs by any stretch of the imagination. Let me give you some idea. Well, in fact, I will turn to Mr. Chris White, who I'd not heard of, and I'm sorry for that. He's no longer with us. I believe his primary interest was in dance rather than song. But he did take the time out to catalogue all of Collinson's collection and let us know what are in the boxes, and then try and put them into some semblance of order by placing them in the repertoires of the singers. However, it is revealing, since we are talking about real songs of the countryside, that Collinson failed to take down the name or even the county for over 100 songs, which are simply marked as anonymous. So, real or not, that's his approach, unfortunately, to a number of songs. There are some downright oddities in there. Francis Collinson believed that you could collect a song from anywhere, which I totally understand, but that included the radio. So we find that he's quickly scribbled down songs from radio, the Home Service Children's Hour, because he happened to like the song. Whether it was a folk song or not, I don't know. But also he's found songs out in the field like, and added them to his collection, like Please Mr. Conductor. Evidently he beat the Everly Brothers to that one, and that's in there. And also the favourite with the gypsy singers in this day and age, Can I Sleep in Your Barn Tonight, Mister? Then there are 8 mysterious items marked from the Pitchford collection, which has got myself and, dare I say, our host Steve, in as much as we're not quite sure what the Pitchford collection refers to. I've got an idea which I'll put up to you. I first thought that it was Pitchford, which I believe is in Shropshire, but then it turns out Steve found that one of the songs was actually from Northamptonshire, so that knocks that on the head. The only other Pitchford I can think of is the one I mentioned earlier on, which is Dennis Pitchford, who was a writer on rural matters. He did actually write some songs, but it may be that he collected a few as well, and this is referred to the Pitchford collection. Other oddities are a begging buttermilk, chickens before they were hatched, the Cheshire Man went to Spain, then there's the music hall song The Fox and the Bear, They All Have a Mate But Me, and a fragment entitled I married a woman I thought was rich, which I've never come across anywhere at all. And then the old wooden plough, which appears to be sung to the G-Ho Dobbin tune. And then going back to those gardeners, the Lancefield brothers, who were working for in the garden when Collinson was there, we have the Woodside Woodinson. That's the Woodside Woodinson. Now there's a name for a song. In fact, it's the Woodside Shipwreck, and that's another song that's never been collected anywhere else. I have full intention of dumping this on the I was going to say defenceless Steve to find out what it's all about. Steve Gardam, I mean. But he's far from defenceless when it comes to tracing songs. So anyway, let us start off with a picture of Mr. Collinson himself, and it is the best known picture of Mr. Collinson. Now, this I have to share, which I will do. There he is. Behind him is a load of music, but I'll explain what that is in a minute. Now, Collinson there is, let's expand him a bit. He's talking to a hurdle maker and thatcher, a hurdle maker in Sixpenny Handley in Dorset. We didn't know that, and so I bought the book of the Country magazine, because this is the photograph that you may be familiar with on the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library website, as heralding the collection of Collinson's collection. He sat appearingly, seems to be sat on a tree stump at the time. And Walter Lucas is this man's name. How do we know? Because at the bottom of the page, if I can get up to it, Francis Dillon has written it down, as you can see. It's at the bottom of the page, so I'll read it anyway. Frank Collinson notes down the prickety bush from the singing in traditional style of C.W. Lucas, hurdle maker of Sixpenny Handley in Dorset. Now, I'm going to spend a little time, but brief time, on this particular song because it reveals Collinson's collecting style, and I'm going to go to good old Bronson. According to Bronson, he's a hurdle worker. Well, that's all right. We know what he means. And there is the tune. It's been transposed to the key of G. And I'd just like you to look at the first line of the song, and you'll see that the tune there is, I guess what you'd describe as emphatic. Henry Hammond found that a lot of Dorset folk songs had an emphatic or a very positive opening to them, almost like a statement. He found it in the Seeds of Love. So if I actually just briefly exaggerate the Seeds of Love, the Dorset version. I sowed the seeds of love, and then into the tune. Da-da-da-da-da-da. So it is with the prickle holly bush, as he's called it, or the prickety bush, as the singer called it. Hold your hand, dear judge, and hold for a little while. A very sort of an emphatic opening. Well, now, the reason I'm inflicting this upon you is because I'd like to turn to the notation made by Collinson. And here it is. His notation is not quite as bad as Ralph Williams, but he's pushing it. As you can see, and I will zoom in a little bit, it's very, very difficult. Now, number one, we don't have a time signature, but it is very obviously in common time. He's in the key of F, and it's very difficult to tell whether the first note is actually a G or an F. It does look like it's extended there. There's a dot there, but he has missed out the emphatic ending. There's no extension to the F at the end of the second bar there, and so it goes. Well, all right, he was sat on a tree stump at the time, and so he missed a couple of notes. Let's not be too hard on him. And I wouldn't even bother mentioning it to you until, lo and behold, I found this. And this one we will go into. And as you've probably already read in Collinson's scroll, we have suggested true version. Oh dear. And if you look at the tune again, it has been completely flattened out and altered. Now, this to me, and maybe to other people, is a massive red flag. And I'm going to stop the share at that because I just like to point out that when collectors start rewriting tunes, it does throw into doubt everything else they collect as well. Now, maybe I'm being a bit harsh. I don't think I am, but the 100 songs that I've chosen from the Collinson collection now become a little more difficult to publish, in as much as I'm going to have to check every single tune and see if it fits the words as well as it should do. And then what do I do if I find that he probably has rewritten the tune? The only thing that springs to mind is being trained as a continuity presenter by the BBC to do a good old BBC standard cop-out with "some people might say," which works beautifully and gets you out of trouble. As in, some people might say the tune could possibly be being extended by the singer. Just as a little aside, ladies and gentlemen, if you hear a BBC employee or interviewer saying some people might say, it's a sure sign he hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. But like I say, that's another that's another talk as well. So Walter Lucas, well, I was able to ring Tiffany at the EFDSS and say your anonymous singer has now got a name. He was visited by Lomax and by Kennedy and recorded. I've not managed to get hold of the recordings. Now, the reason we've got that name, Walter Lucas, is, or Charlie Lucas as he preferred to be called, is because of Francis Dillon, who I've mentioned nothing about at all. Francis Dillon was a BBC producer, and he was a bit of a bit of a character, shall we say? There was a article in the what was it again? The yes, the Sunday Pictorial about him, and it said, "Listen to this, you love it. Francis Dillon, the man who gathered the farmers, basket makers, cowherds, and glove makers together, is a homespun type. Wears corduroys and a fisherman's hand-knitted guernsey. In Portland Place bars he drinks beer, the swine, and doesn't like the idea of getting publicity in the press." Well, that may be a caricature of him, more or less. He was a very nice man, as I understand, and also quite a talented producer. And he did manage to do a good job on the Country magazine for 12 years. The reason the Country magazine stopped is rather sad. And I'll just do the quote from the Sunday Pictorial. While researching the career of the probation officer, he was attacked by 3 men with razors in Covent Garden, and he received 18 stitches to his hands. Francis Dillon retired from the BBC in 1959, and I don't blame him. And he continued as a freelance writer and producer from his home in Arundel, died of pneumonia on the 9th of December 1982 on his 83rd birthday at Arundel Hospital. Well, there you are. I think actually I'll stick my neck out and say I think the attack was a homophobic attack, judging by his relationship with Mr. Collinson, also Noel Coward. And that is very, very sad indeed. But he was certainly an influence on Collinson. Well, not only did Collinson visit, and I'm coming to an end, don't worry, Harry Cox and John Copper, but I believe he also was one of the first people to collect from Charlie Wills. He visited the London pub in Bridport, which was Charlie Wills' haunt, where he sang with his young apprentice Bill House. And unfortunately, Collinson did not take down his name and noted 2 or 3 songs. One of them was Wear the Corduroy, and the other one was Lord Thomas and Fair, which I haven't actually checked the tunes against the recordings as yet. I simply haven't got round to it. There is some correspondence in the collection as well from the singers, mainly to the BBC, directed to Mr. Collinson, but I've sent to the BBC, and they are rather self-effacing. A lot of the singers saying it was very, very difficult for me to remember the words nowadays. They were my father's words, etc., etc. And on one occasion there was an old woman who wrote through in very spidery handwriting and said, "If you don't consider my song The Golden Glove to be suitable for the Country magazine, please feel free to drop it in the wastepaper bin." Which I feel once again is a sure sign that that the BBC was held in such esteem as they wouldn't be interested in the mere yokels in the country. Well, that was not true, and I will say that I'd say that I stick my neck out again and say Collinson was a trailblazer. Collinson was a trailblazer, inasmuch as he was the first to get the actual field recordings on the air at the BBC. And I'd like to think, and I probably did, open the door for Bert Lloyd, and also for some years later Ewan MacColl with his wonderful song carrier programmes. And I wouldn't be sitting here now if it were not for Ewan MacColl's song carrier programmes. He inspired me to write my documentary called Between the Wars many years ago, which led to me having 34 years regular employment as a radio presenter for the BBC. And so there we are. And I think we've got a lot to thank Mr. Collinson for. He has no love lost between Collinson and Bert Lloyd. If you look at the 1968 Folk Song Journal, you will find a review of folk song in England by Francis Collinson, I'll just read the first sentence of this. It comes as a shock to one who, like this reviewer, has done his stint in the field of English folk song, a field to him which seemed idyllic, to find the same field used for the exploitation, or exposition at least, of class distinction and class prejudice. And he then goes into a long rant from an anti-political point of view. Well, there we are. That was Francis Collinson. No, he wasn't perfect. No, I don't know at all whether he's actually noted the songs correctly. I'm going to do my best to find out. That is as far as I've got, and I hope that was of interest to you.
Thank you very much. Great start to today's sessions. We do have 5 minutes or just below 5 minutes for questions or comments. If anybody wants to raise their hand, don't put up your hand on the screen because I can't see you all at the same time because there's 50 of you. Go down to reactions. It's react, and there's a thing for raising your hand. And John Baxter's in there with his hand up. John.
Hi, Nick. Sorry. Where you say that he's got a true annotation, he's corrected the music later. Do you know what the difference? I can imagine that some people would have scribbled something down when they were in the field, and then neatened it off a few days later.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. No, he didn't do it any. Well, I haven't found any other places where he did that. He that particular song, he just did not like the opening of it.
Right.
And this is, I mean, if he'd just rewritten it again, he'd have crossed out the original one. You see, but this was, as he put, a suggested true version, and that's
he's not correcting from memory then.
Well, I don't know that. It is something to consider. He could have been. He could have been correcting.
That was what I was going to suggest. Is that he might be correcting the scribble he made in the field.
Yeah,
if it's a short length of time.
Had it fitted, had that particular correction, as we're referring to it, had anything to do whatsoever with the words. The words don't fit it.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I'll shut up.
Yeah, thank you, John. We'll have to move on. Peter Shepherd.
Yes, I one of the songs I collected in Gloucestershire was the Old Riverside from the Braswell family and also Doris Davis. And when I was looking for other versions, I found that Collinson had in fact collected a version of the same song, extremely similar, same tune, from a family by the name of Davis. Whether he knew they were travellers, I don't know. And he also noted in his text of that, publish only with these verses as here, which may explain why some of the verses of that song, which are not particularly publishable in some ways, or might not have been at the time. The other thing I would like to perhaps put into the public record, if you like, is that Collinson, when we started the competitions at the Blairgowrie Festival for the Traditional Music and Song Association, we needed someone to do the adjudication of those first competition singers. And I got in touch with Francis Collinson because Hamish Henderson wasn't particularly keen on competition. And so Francis Collinson was the first adjudicator. That was in 1969 when Sheila Stewart won the competition with the Twa Brothers. The 42nd festival of the same festival, which then moved to Kinross and finally to Kirriemuir, took place this last weekend when a lovely singer by the name of Natalie Chalmers won the same cup with a song, The Cruel Brother, Cruel Mother. So I just thought that might be of interest.
It is of interest, and the fact you actually met Collinson is also of interest to me as well. I did know about that because Vic Smith told me.
Right. Yes. Well, I went to see, my wife and myself went down to see Collinson in the Borders, Peebles, where he lived, in a very nice house, and we were brought a tray of coffee with the coffee cups, silver coffee cups, and everything to serve them with. He was quite a classy character, put it that way.
Lovely. Well, I'd love to converse with you on that when we got a bit more time. Thank you.
We'll have to move on. Derek, and then Vic, and then that's all we've got time. So there's a quick one, Derek.
Well, very briefly, Andy Turner has posted that the Walter Lucas recording has been put on an LP. Oh,
yeah.
CD.
Yeah.
I've just dug that off the shelf. So
Thank
how
you,
does
I was
that
aware of
compare
that.
with these various versions of the notation?
Yes, well, I was aware of that. I haven't been able to track down the recording as yet to buy it, but I will do.
Right. I can send that to you, Nick, if you need it.
Yes, please. I would love
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Vic, thank you, Derek.
Yeah,
Vic?
just a point on the relationship between Bert Lloyd and Collison. I mean, Bert was working for the BBC in the late 30s,
Was he?
and yeah, he produced two fairly political programs that were controversial, but he also did the broadcast from the Eels Foot pub in 1939. So I think it wasn't. I mean, that they probably knew each other. They probably didn't get on. I mean, the a lot of the EFDSS type people were very, I mean, people like what was his name, the dancing director, but their politics were very right wing, and Bert wasn't exactly popular among a lot of them because of his Communist Party membership and so on.
Thanks for that, Dick. Vic, you've actually corrected me. I thought it was in the 1950s when Bert.
No, late 30s. It's quite interesting. There's a voice. There's the shadow of the swastika is which was described as prematurely anti-fascist, which is a wonderful description. And the voice of the seaman, because of Bert's had been involved in. These were early attempts at sort of documentary, but then he did the recordings at the Eel's Foot, which have been brought out, I think, on the on the label that was produced by John. What's his name? I'm very slow on names. I'm very sorry. Oh, it's enough. It's enough.
The mea culpa. I should have looked at the dates. I just had it in my head that all took place in the 1950s. It was probably Kennedy I was thinking of, not Bert Lloyd.
Right.
Bert Lloyd. But Vic, that's excellent. So in fact, he was not as much of a trailblazer as I thought. So there we are.
As a collector, I think he was. Anyway,
Yeah.
so thank you very much, Nick, and thanks for everybody's questions. Now, I'm telling you, all of you, you've all got to go and get a gardener, and then we'll have lots more songs, won't we? We'll be fine. Anyway, shall we move on to Derek? Derek.
Hi, everybody. I would like to thank Steve, especially for letting me be an interloper whenever I feel like it. But perhaps more seriously, I looked at my notes, and the last time I gave a talk for TSF was September of 2022, and that's when my project was a month old. So I'm going to put something in the chat for the curious minds who want to know and want to go directly to what I'm going to be walking you through. But I run a thing called the Fieldwork Archive, and so the last time I was on TSF, I had about 215 recordings, maybe. 3 years down the road, I have 1,560 at this point. I was fiscally sponsored this year to do this work, so what I'm basically looking for is oral traditional music out in the field, very 20th century imprint template for the 21st century. So modern low maxing, if you want to call it that, although I like to think I might be slightly more ethical. No gardeners yet, but potters, doulas, historians. So I'm going to just share screen and kind of walk you through some of the highlights. When I was last on here, I did just kind of share the inception of the archive. Which, I think the universe loves a good cliche, started in North Carolina, because why wouldn't it? But I'd begun the work in North Carolina because I had found the last living descendant of a WPA singer who was that woman's daughter. Lena Turberville was recorded as part of the WPA push by Dr. Herbert Halpert, and at the time her last living daughter was around and could remember a version of Lambkin. So I won't bore you with some of the early feeble attempts at Field Recording, but you can see some photos on this carousel here. These are some of the informants that I've stayed in touch with. There might be some familiar faces on this slide, some people who might even be in this very meeting. But anyway, we've just tried under the fiscal sponsorship this year, my assistant and I, to strengthen the infrastructure of the archive, make it a little bit more navigable. It hasn't changed much in design, but now if you go to catalog number, you can jump between the numbers, which is a bit of an improvement. I'm on the very brink of putting a search bar in here. But I want to stress that I think that this work is already going on all over the globe. However, it's going on with Facebook vertical videos that last 40 seconds of someone's niece singing a Spanish song, and it's going on YouTube where someone's uploaded a VHS of their grandmother, from the 90s singing an old folk song from where she grew up, and it's going on TikTok where people are remembering, an old Irish song from their aunt or something. So I would say in the 21st century, we do have a very nebulous practice of people remembering old songs occasionally. My effort is to just condense that. So I don't think I'm doing anything terrifically novel. I'm just a very organized man. So I've left the link to this project in the chat on Zoom for people who want to browse directly. Many different ways to browse: title, singer, catalog number, tags. Unfortunately, this project is currently expanding at such a rate that it's hard to keep organizing it. I have an assistant who cross-links everything. So, if you go to Singer, for instance, and you go to the Johnson Girls, Deirdre Murtha is part of the Johnson Girls, so you can also get to Deirdre's page. We've tried to do it something like that. I'll play you this one to kick us off, but you'll see There Was a Lady in This Town is a funny variant of Eggs and Marrowbone, completely different title. So we've, as far as possible, tried to list the variants, but I'll play a couple of highlights, recent highlights, and then I might just open up for questions or discussion, because really what propels this project is contributions. So I had done about 2.5 years of collecting, first in North Carolina, and then a little bit in Britain. And what I mostly found in Britain were music hall songs, some on the more obscure side, and then, some children's songs like Cushy Butterfield or things like that. Once this website went live with about 200 recordings, I think it became very apparent what I was trying to do, and the contributions just started to pile up. So really what I'm always looking for is to expand this project. But anyhow, some of you are probably familiar with Deirdre. She is indeed part of the Johnson Girls. She did indeed sing at the Essex Sea Music Festival in Connecticut this summer, but I met Deirdre on her own just a couple of weeks ago, and she sang probably 18, 19 songs. So I'll play this one, which is just a nice example of how a song may have a different title to the eyes, but is ostensibly the same song to the ears.
There was a lady in this town who loved her husband well, and there's another man in this town that she loved twice as well. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. She went to the doctor to see what she could find, to try and get some medicine to run her old man blind. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. He gave to her some medicine and sealed it with his hand, to give to her husband that he might understand. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. She gave to him the medicine and said, "Now drink it all." Says he, "I am so blind now that I can't see you at all." With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei. With me right for la for lullery sing fa la la lorelei.
In the interest of time, I'm going to try and get through a couple other recent highlights. And if you feel overwhelmed by 1,550 recordings, although I suspect most of the people on this meeting would not feel overwhelmed, they'd feel intrigued. For the common person, you can also just hear a random recording and it'll just take you to a catalog entry of any sort. I mean, that took us to 423. This is taking us to 1115. So that's sort of the easy entry point, but I'm going to go through just a couple of other recent highlights. Let's see. I've had 2 meetings with Peggy Seeger over Zoom. One was last year, and then she said, I don't ever give people a second go, but I suppose I can give you a second go. And I don't believe she's recorded or performed this song anywhere before, so I was a little bit like, so this is nice and short. But this is another example of how I do this. I will try and meet people in person as far as possible, but phone calls and Zoom certainly count.
I went down to the mill one day, met Miss Julie on the way, expressed the wish that she might ride, hop up, Julie, by my side. Sit down there, Julie Glover, give me a kiss, don't tell your mother. Play on the banjo, I'm your lover, going to the mill with Julie Glover.
So that's kind of fun. But I mostly actually try and find everyday people who are not performers. I certainly have performers who want to come forward all the time. But one of the things that I really prize is finding everyday people for this project. And if I am dealing with a performer, for instance, I've also interviewed Gordon Bach. He gave me a song he heard on a lobster boat. I mean, it was The Mountains of Mourne, but it's not really part of his performance repertoire. It was something that he kind of had transmitted to him by ear. So in that way, even if it's a well-known, well-lubricated performer that's on stage all the time, I'm still looking for these sort of hidden gems of things that may not otherwise be apparent to someone just casually invested in that person's repertoire. So to that end, I met a cousin of a friend of mine who was in town from Agen, France, and she sang me a 7-minute song about a cannibal, which was really fun. I can play a little bit of it.
Petit navire. So this one is interesting because I found out very recently that the story was pretty sad. So I'm gonna sing and I'll tell you the meaning after. Il était un petit navire, il était un petit navire qui n'avait jamais navigué, qui n'avait jamais navigué, ohé ohé.
And it goes on like that. I mean, there's not a lot of melodic variation. So again, in the interest of time, I'm trying to just give you some brief samples here. The other thing I'll mention before I kind of open up for questions is that to satisfy the fiscal sponsorship, I did kind of have to do a city-specific focus. So I'm in northern Connecticut, and there's a city not too far away called Waterbury. And because Connecticut's right on the coast, you have a lot of amazing immigrants and immigrant populations coming in. And I won't even open up the can of worms about, that I've chosen this year to do that work. But I will say that I have found Albanian, Dominican, Haitian, Puerto Rican, and then some Cape Verdean. So I'll play you a little bit of this Cape Verdean family, and then I might play you an Albanian song in full because I just think it's so beautiful. And then maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion. But yeah.
A 13 de maio na covadeirinha, a Virgem Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria, Ave, Ave, Ave Maria.
So this is the 13th of May, which is the day of the apparition of Our Lady of Fatima, which is, if you were in Portugal, she's huge over there. Yeah. So, so we celebrate the May 13th in Cape Verde as well as, Our Lady of Fatima Day, and this is a song that was written for Our Lady of Fatima.
So as far as possible, if someone is able to give an explanation to a song that is not in the English language, I try and include that explanation. there's a much easier way to do this without boring you all. Let me just get right to this person's page. Anyway, I hope you all have fun looking at this project. It's certainly grown beyond anything I would have dreamed when I gave this presentation 3 years ago, and I'm constantly trying to expand it. So I guess the other thing I should mention is there's a wonderful fellow about my age named Rowan Glass, who, if you look up Rowan, he's done some really hardcore work in Palestine and Turkey, for instance, doing a lot of ethnojournalism. But he also went to Colombia this year. And so we're on the brink of processing his Colombia recordings. My assistant also moved. He'd always been a remote assistant, but he'd moved from Miami, Florida out to Nicaragua. So he's made a couple of recordings in Nicaragua. And so because I have some fiscal sponsorship money, I've been trying to recruit some field agents to be in places that I cannot, because, you know, having a Zoom with someone is valuable, but obviously having them in the room, begets a lot more data. So I tried that out earlier in the year. I had a girl go out to Wisconsin and visit the granddaughters of Pearl Borusky. And Pearl Borusky and Lena Turberville are both on those wonderful red 12 inches that the Library of Congress put out of all the Anglo-American ballads. So I am it's partially everyday people. It's partially Where Are They Now with these descendants of WPA singers. It's partially getting well-known singers to show me hidden gems. And then this fourth component was just to try and satisfy the Connecticut Community Foundation to represent some immigrant groups in Connecticut. So here's an absolutely amazing Albanian song. I suspect it's a Kosovo song because he was living so far north of Albania that this was definitely Kosovo. But, I started this with child ballad fever, and I've realized that that's a rather boring pursuit and that I should be taking all kinds of songs. And all the time I get beautiful earworms like this. So he's playing a two-string lute called a chifteli there, which I just think is completely outrageous. And I wasn't able to make that many field notes for this session because there was actually a bit of a language barrier. But you can see he wrote a bunch of stuff down in Albanian at the bottom. And God bless the internet, someone translated it for me. So it reads, where I learned it from. Since elementary school at age 10, I sang, and I won first place award at the school with 700 students. I was 11 when I won the award, and I remember it to this day. So as far as possible, I try and include some context around the song when it's not in English, whether that's spoken or I have to kind of hunt and peck for it afterwards. So the People's Place where this was performed is my fiscal sponsorship. They have a brand new office with like 18 rooms, and so this was their common room that we recorded this in. But I don't usually go looking for particular ethnic groups when I do this work. I try and just organically run into people, but just to satisfy the grant's preoccupations, I've gone out and looked for some of the ethnic groups in Waterbury. So in an effort not to bore anyone, I can just open for questions or discussion at this point, because I could just go on and on and on about some of the things I've recorded this year.
Thank you, Derek. That was far from boring. That was really very, very interesting.
Well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
It's astonishing how much more you've had since the last time, you've got since the last time you were on. I noticed one when you were flicking through one song called "We Three Slobs." Now,
Yes.
I think I could sing that. What's that a version of?
We Three Kings. It's definitely a parody of We Three
Okay,
Kings.
of course,
Yeah.
I should have guessed that.
Yeah.
Do you collect from children?
That's a little bit tricky. If the parents are there and they're encouraging that, yes. So I guess I could share one more thing. Let's see. It's a great question. I may just keep the sharing on if we're gonna.
Yes, if people are going to want to hear things.
Yeah, I do have one younger mother, and by that I mean about my age, so like 35-ish, who is been very encouraging of her daughter to sing any new camp song she's learned over the summer. So I'm due for another session with them. But let me see if I can find the other one that I was thinking of, which is slightly more interesting.
Don't forget to put your hands up, people, if you want to do anything.
Here we go.
Astăzi să crespezi în grindă, jos din cuia cu oglindă. M-am adus în satul dorul, azi singur puișorul, și-am închis ușa pe bine cu zăvorul. Iată-mă tot cea veche, ochii hai ce mai pereche, și ce cap frumos le sar în ea mea oare, dar acum și la ureche urtă floare.
So I do have 3 separate people over the age of 100 in the collection. I would love to go, in the opposite direction, but I find, given that it's the internet and you have to blur faces sometimes, I don't have that many children, but I would like to go the Dr. Halpert route and get a bunch of ring games and clapping games. And if I do have those, they're usually contributed by adults, what they can remember of their clapping games in the schoolyard.
Yeah. Right. Martin's got his hand up.
Yeah, Derek, that's terrific stuff. When you are approaching your singers, do they choose what they sing to you?
Yes. Occasionally I have a request or a preoccupation. I'll say, do you know this particular ballad because it's a favorite? Or you grew up in this part of, wherever I've gotten a version of something from this region. Do you know it as well? And so, for instance, when I went to Iceland in May, I made about 50 recordings. And I did try in Reykjavik, Eyrarbakki, and Akureyri to get the same song, which is a children's song called Gamle Noe, which is basically Father Noah. And I got 3 separate versions. But I don't generally steer. I try and ask people what their earliest memories were, particularly if they're an established performer. And we kind of go from there organically. And people do often bring song lists to me. And so those are some of my prized possessions at this point. I have a whole box full of, grocery receipts or note cards, and people have written down what songs they think they might sing for me.
Thank you.
Derek, one of the things that you mentioned earlier on, right at the beginning, was that there's lots of songs out there on YouTube and on Twitter or whatever it's called, or no, not Twitter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Facebook, and a lot of them are really fascinating and really quite important from our point of view, and yet they are scattered, and you can't find them, and you don't know if they're going to stay there do you ever contact people that stick things up on the web and
Yes.
say, can I have it for my archive?
Well, not maybe in that process where I would siphon off the recording and upload it. I would want to interview the person again. But I'll give you a good example where I don't know if anyone follows Dime Store Radio on Instagram or whatever, but they post clips from like, old documentaries and stuff. And I do follow them, but I don't pay close attention because a lot of the material they post I'm very familiar with. But someone sent me one of the posts and said, if you look at the two top comments, the two most voted comments, it's two girls who are great-granddaughters of Doug Wallen, and they're getting to know each other in the comments. So of course I reached out to both of them. One didn't remember any text. She could just remember Doug singing, but could only really hum. And the other is like second cousin to Sheila K. Adams, but is not a singer. And yet she decided she wanted to sing for me. So she sang Conversation with Death and Pretty Sorrow. And she sent me a tape of Doug that was recorded in the 90s, like a hootenanny in his house. And so I think Queenie's on there and maybe Alice Gerard and a couple of other people. And so that people trust me with this stuff just because I've reached out with enthusiasm is wonderful. But no, I've never templated a recording from TikTok or something onto the site. I would have to re-interview the person.
If somebody was dead, for instance, you could.
I'm dealing with that. There were recordings made, fascinating recordings made in 2006 of a singer that I met someone who knew this woman, and I haven't decided whether I'm going to absorb them. I'm a little bit choosy.
All right. Yeah. So we got two more hands up, so we'll have to hurry up again. So Paul.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so my question is a variant of Martin's, really. I mean, back in the day, the collectors would often go through a bit of a rigmarole to explain to their potential informants what sort of songs they wanted. I'm talking about old songs, or maybe they would give an example like Barbara Allen, or they would just collect everything and then edit out the musical songs or whatever. Now, I know you're taking a more inclusive approach, Derek, but have you come across any reaction from the people you're collecting, or questions from people you're collecting from? Do they say, do you mean this sort of song or that sort of song? Because particularly with the immigrant communities, there could be an issue about different concepts and different language about different types of song. They might not distinguish traditional and non-traditional in the same way. So is there anything you can offer on that?
Well, I can often save the day with a session by saying, if someone's really only got Peter, Paul and Mary or Rolling Stones songs that they remember, I can save the day and say, how about any hymns? Did you grow up singing in church? And then, of course, there's an old hymn that might come out, and it might actually be an obscure hymn. With the multi-language stuff, I do have a bit of a recall for what I might be looking for in terms of the size of a song or the scale of a song. So there's a Portuguese language song called Atirei o Pau no Gato, which means I threw a stick at a cat. And I've found that with Brazilian immigrants all across the northeastern United States, the Cape Verdeans, being African but also speaking Portuguese, they knew that song as well, and then they kind of understood. I wasn't looking for a big serious song that they needed to remember all of, but I was also looking for orally transmitted, smaller, more casual songs.
No, we have to move on, thank you. But I should say that no cats were harmed in making this recording. Meg, last question from Meg.
Hi, Derek. That was really interesting. I was wondering what sort of documentation, like physical documentation, have you got for this archive? Have you got consent forms? Are your field notes indexed? What's kind of the accessibility of the documentation? Do you get people to sign forms for everything you perform?
Yes.
Do you provide transcript?
Well,
what sort of documentation is there?
Judy's on this call, and we know each other very well, and so no, Judy has not had to sign anything, but she understands the nature of this project very deeply. But I do use consent forms for people, for instance, like these ladies at the church. And then as far as possible, there's ephemera and photographs of, so here's the song that they were singing. exterior of the church, the plaque on the church, and I do keep a notebook of mostly free associative notes, but I save the whole session. So, you know, while the songs are clipped up Lomax style and it's just the song in the archive, I've got the 2-hour recording. So if I ever need to confer with, you know, what someone said or what a song means, that information is available. And we have amended a couple of songs, extended the recordings because more information just naturally seemed to be, you know, something that would be beneficial.
So have you got like a way, like a plan for, because for example, there might be a lot of other information that isn't the songs in these like 2-hour interviews that future researchers might be interested in.
Well, they can worry about it when I'm dead. But, you know, I only have 3 non-singing informants in the archive, meaning there was a grandson of a famed singer from the Library of Congress, Oscar Parks. His grandson didn't sing for me, but told a bunch of interesting stories. I got a German folktale when I was in Berlin last year, and then a Portuguese visual artist told me about a couple of the ceremonies in his Portuguese island that he lives on. But I'm really hyper-focused on the singing. Otherwise, I could interview anyone and they could say anything, right? So just to have the fact that someone needs to sing to basically contribute to this archive is my parameter. And, you know, yeah, I think often singers come back to me with PDFs of explanations, email them to me, and so those get included. But generally, it's 20th century style. The focus is on the song. The commentary supports the song.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for everybody's questions. We do have to move on because we have Mike, but a round of applause for
Thank
Derek.
you. I hope you all have fun poking around on the archive.
Yeah, you need to
and I expect many contributions from this meeting, so.
You need to unshare so that we can make room for Mike. Where are you, Mike? You must be on my screen somewhere.
Just need to unmute, and here I am.
Here you are. Okay, over to you.
Okay, well, let me just start the sharing process at least. And I shall bring up.
Yeah, that's working.
Good. I will try and find the first thing I want to share, which is this. And there we go.
Right, you're not on full screen.
Yeah. Okay, now I should be.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks very much for the opportunity to share. My name's Mike Turberville. I'm an M.Mus student, a mature student, as you can see, and I'm at the Academy of Music and Sound, part of the University of West London. So thanks for the opportunity to talk today. My final project, my dissertation subject for the M.Mus, is centred around the subject of toponymy. And the end goal is to design and produce a gazetteer of folk songs from the northeast of Scotland. So what is toponymy, you may ask? Here's the man who introduced me to it. I'm sure a familiar figure to many, if not all of you, WHF Nicolaisen, the late Bill Nicolaisen. He wrote many books on the subject, basically describing it as the use of place names in the folk songs. I was studying the Greg Duncan collection at the time, and as a native Doric speaker, Doric is the dialect spoken in northeast Scotland, I wondered how local names for places were taken account of in the cataloguing process. And the answer to that question and many, many others all came from this man. He talked of toponymy, as I say, as the use of place names, but by place names, we didn't just mean the names of villages or towns, but of things like castles, farms, perhaps bodies of water, mountains, hills, lakes, lochs. All these things are toponymy. And if they appeared in songs, I had the curiosity to wonder how they were recorded. My background to this is that I'm a performer, a singer. I'm not a historian or a cataloger, but the work of the people is so important to me to put this together. So why do we have to put in songs? Mostly just to record what's been going on. It doesn't have to be real events that go on. It doesn't have to be real places. For example, you get the likes of Sir Walter Scott talking about Usher's Well. Usher's Well doesn't exist, he invented it, but it's a story, it's being told, and it's a history that's being told. So that occurred to me that someone somewhere should be tying together all these elements of history, of folklore, of community with the song and producing some sort of reference source and linking it back to all the hard and diligent work that has gone before in terms of collecting and publishing music. So that was the idea of the gazetteer. The main thing that Nicolaisen made me think of this was he called a lot of these place names metaphors. They're metaphors for things. Now, you won't know the same places I know, or some of you may, but when I hear the word Mayfair, I think, oh, upper class, expensive. Brixton, it's a vibrant, edgy, culturally diverse place. Bilston Glen and Orgreave are mining towns where there were terrible clashes with the police in my youth and the community was ripped apart. And Lochaber and Glencoe, they have rugged beauty, loneliness, places of permanent departure. Lochaber no more is a pipe lament. It was written in the 1600s, I think, long before Alan Ramsey added words to it to make a song called Lochaber no more, Route 8497, those of you who catalogue these things. And to reinforce the departure theme, Alan Ramsey's words did great, and they were written in 1760. Further songs and paintings follow up through the years, all with the same element of departure and loss, up to and including the Proclaimers, who include that motif in their letter from America. Barlinnie and Loch Linney are there because they rhyme with each other and they couldn't be more opposite. One is a horrible old Victorian prison, overcrowded and about to close, and Loch Linney is just one of the most beautiful lochs you can see. But wherever it is, it occurred to me that where the song is set matters. You can change the feeling behind a song by the places that are mentioned in it. So I'm looking to create a gazetteer for the northeast of Scotland. That's where I come from. That's where I grew up. And Doric was spoken as a matter of course in our house, but it wasn't just spoken, it was also sung. I mean, family parties, everybody had a party piece that they sang, me included. My one was is coming up later, the Back of Benachie, but you'll recognise some of these songs from historical events that happened in this area, the Battle of Harlaw, Millatifte's Annie, ballads about farm life, the barnyards of Delgatay, Drumdelgie, and the fisher songs from the two coasts around the Murray Firth, Tatties and Heron, the fisherman's wife, and generally folk stories, the lass and the soldier, who end up being the bonny lass of Five-Year, and my one at the bottom there, where the Gadi runs. The Gadi is a burn at the back of Benachie. So the whole reason for me putting this together was I couldn't understand how local terminology would fit in with a gazetteer. How could we work with a coastline like this? And this is all straight from Nicolaisen, where Fenechty is Findochty on the road signs. Gameray is Gardenstown. The place that's on the map is Aberchirder. Nobody ever calls it Aberchirder. It's Foggy Lone. Fraserburgh is known as the Broch, and Peterhead is Peterhead or PD or the Blue Toon. They all have different names. So how was this approached? And I talked to the people behind Greg Duncan collection, the people behind James Madison Carpenter collection and said, how are you doing this? And they said, quite simply, we're using Nicolaison's book. And that's the guidance I've taken, so I've bought the book too. So to relate these places to the song and to the history of the area, there are questions that I've been asking. Did the events in this song actually happen, or are they made up? Are there other historical aspects mentioned in the song? What does the song tell us about the place the place that it's written about? What about the people? The things like the bothy ballads and the cornkisters that are written on farm life and the nature of selling your service to a farmer. What about the community relationships? How do they get together? How do they enjoy themselves? All these things are, I believe, worthy of recording for someone like me who is going to go out and tell stories and perform. So I took the decision to produce a gazetteer of folk songs, and that's what this final project is about. So it's researching the existing collection of songs that contain anywhere in their text anything about toponymy, any names of towns or villages or rivers or mountains, gathering those together and finding out how many variants there are, linking that to all the research that's already taken place. In other words, I'm not going to copy what other people have done, but I'm going to point to it and say it's over there if you want to find out. And I'll show you how that works in a bit. We talk about how and where they were collected, what the variants are, what they sound like, what other places are mentioned in the same song, and what other songs refer to this place. So it's a two-way relationship. And what about the history, community, and folklore of the area. That's what it'll do. It'll contain not my version of, but a version of an index of all the versions, examples of a performance, comparative lyrics, the different lyrics happen in different ways for different songs. And added to that, some elements of history, cultural timeline, and local folklore. So this is a rough drawing of it. And I've got signposts to the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library, to the Elphinstone Institute of the University of Aberdeen, to a wonderful site I only discovered a couple of weeks ago, the Kister Riches, which has so many recordings that I want to hear, and to maps online, offline, maps other people have made. And in my part of that world, there's some history, some folklore, and some community info, and something about the song. And those I have used AI to define automatically. Now I can hear a shudder, a virtual shudder through the room, but we should embrace AI. AI is the best searcher of the internet there is, better than me, better than most people. And I think that I have enough knowledge when I'm panning for the gold to recognize what's dross and throw it out right away. And then to ask AI, what are your sources for making this outrageous statement? Show me, and I'll show you how I do that in a minute. So that the fool's gold can be got rid of. And that's where we're heading for with this. So I did a project with a local folk club where we would put together a playlist of songs about rivers, and the rivers mostly in the area I'm talking about. And this is how, in anger, the product is going to get used. It creates a playlist that uses folk songs from various collections that use rivers as a metaphor for an uncrossable barrier, unable to get to one's love, a hard thing to do, fate or destiny, emotional turmoil. And I was inspired to do this by the initial Nicolaisen metaphor of Annan Water, where he and his wife went visiting Annan Water, and having seen it, he then realized why it appeared in so many songs in terms of losing lovers, drowning, trying to reach lovers and things. It was the Anne and Water that was the original start of it. Beyond that, there's songs like the Water is Wide, or Whaley Whaley as it's known, and it's just an uncrossable barrier, something that there's no way that he can get to whoever he wants to go to by crossing it. Benachie, the song that I sing, there's a version of that, Where the Gardaí Runs, and it's all about somebody longing to go back to a nice, safe place, a nice, safe stream like the Gardaí at Benachie, as opposed to the Dee that drowned her lover. The drowned lover, indeed, is a common theme where we're introduced to the poor, unfortunate Willie here, Willie and Margaret. Willie heads off to cross the Clyde in this version and sadly dies. But Willie's rare, as Barbara Dixon says in her version, but he dies, he drowns in Yarrow, or he may drown in Gamery water, we're not quite sure. And bring it right up to date, a local to me for D-side in Aberdeen, from Banchory, is a singer called Callum Bowie, and he's written a wonderful song called We Are the River, where he reflects on fate and destiny as that. So here's the working of it, if you will. So I couldn't remember where the Nicola Eisen quote was from. So I asked AI, I said, what did Nicola Eisen write about Anne and Water? And they came back with the source, which I could then go and check. And indeed, it was this source. Wrote about it in this journal. And that gave me the quotes that I needed to say, okay, well, what about other songs that also serve a similar purpose to Anne and Water? This is, well, you could try the Clyde's Water. That's the River Clyde does this. This is all done in AI, and this is how I interrogate. And it's just a matter of saying, okay, what's your source for that? And then the source would be the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library. Off I go there, and there we have the research that I need to go further on. So taking it further, going to the water of Yarrow, or the water of Gamery, or Willie's Rare and Willie's Fair, they all exist in various versions of this song. I can ask where Gamery is if I don't know, because I do, but I can ask where it is, and then AI will tell me that, and I'll get a map of it. And finally, I'll go over to the Kist of Riches and say, what does this song actually sound like?
Willie's rare and Willie's fair, and Willie's wondrous bonny.
And there we have Jean Redpath singing beautifully as always.
If he marries any.
And so with that, I shall now take you to what I've developed. Now, you may have seen in the invite to this that when you see this screen, it's not something that I have programmed. This is two spreadsheets with the information I've shown you, which I have made with some content available to anybody who's interested to read it, and you'll be able to access them later. They'll come up in the chat, I believe. But let's look at how it deals with Benachie. There's a listing of place names there on the left, and I click on that to get some information about Benachie and some information about the songs that refer to it. If I want to expand that information, I just click it up, and there we have some folklore. It tells you what happens there and what the history of the area is and what community information there is around there. If there were synonyms for the hills, there isn't, but that would be there. And that's how we deal with the different names for different places. They go in the synonyms. And the song reference itself goes to the song. We'll look at that in a minute. And there's a map, so you can actually see where Benachie is. And there it is. As a child, we were taken up Benahir, probably from the age of 8 onwards. The school ran trips. We sang the song as we went out in the bus, and we climbed up to the Mither Tap there, through the forest and up to the Mither Tap. And from the top, you can see down there the Gadi Burn. It's in the middle of the screen there. And that is where we ended up on our school outings, singing the song. We'll come to the song now. I'll just close that. And here is the song. You can see that in the VWML, we have, this is James Madison Carpenter. We can see his version of the lyrics here. They're slightly different to other ones, and that's a decision that an artist will make at some point. And there's links to all the other places that are mentioned in the song. So Benachie itself, the Gadi Burn, the Louren Fair. That Louren Fair is the Lawrence Fair. It's held in a place called Old Drain. It's been held for 500 years and it's still taking place. It took place a couple of weeks ago. But just as it happens, let's go and look, and you can see where Old Drain is as well. As you can link through to it. So yeah, there's Old Drain, and that's on the 17th of August. That's where the Louren Fair was held. Again, and the answer came via the AI. And other things, how many versions are there of them? And that takes us to a familiar list of, there are some, I'm struggling to find my navigation. There we are. There are 50 versions of it, of different titles. Some are the Bacca Benahie, some are Where the Gadi Rins, but they're all beautifully catalogued there. And I can go through and do that, take advantage of all that great research that other people have done. I'm not copying out anything. And just to go back there, if we wanted to watch a video, we would, but we'd probably end up with YouTube adverts. But we can listen to the song from the Kist of Riches. And this is the song I used to sing at parties if it comes up. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, Ginnawer, for the Gadi Rins, for the Gadi Rins, for the Gadi Rins. Oh, Ginnawer, the Gadi Rins at the Fete o' Benahie. It's I would never come back again, come back again, come back again. It's I would never come back again, your Lowland lads to see. Oh, Ginnawer, for the Gadi Rins, for the Gadi Rins, for the Gadi Rins.
Popular local song. And from there you can learn all about the story behind the song, where sadly the woman loses both boyfriends she has. One drowns in the Dee and the other gets killed at the Louren Fair. It's all very sad indeed. And there's the chance then to attach other things there. And that is the basis of the gazetteer. So you can see that there are lots of place names to go through and lots of information about each place. So if you wanted to know what was written about, since it's there, Aberdeen, you can get it there. And one of the places that mentions it is the Bonnie Lass of Fyvie, because there's mony a Bonnie Jean in the tune of Aberdeen. So with that, I shall try and head back to this here, and I shall end there. I'll leave that on the screen so that those who are watching a recording can get in touch with me, and I'll hand back and say I'm ready to take any questions.
Thank you, Mike. That was excellent. Lots of food for thought, especially for us indexers and cataloguers.
Yes. Well, thanks to you, I'm able to do it.
Well, I like the fact that, what you do brings together all sorts, it brings my indexes and the Vaughan Williams and the smaller Scottish studies. And that's the way it's meant to work. It's meant to be all joined up. Right, before I say any more, let's go to some questions. Abby's got a question. We've got 5 minutes, so keep them short, please.
Okay. Thank you for this. I sometimes, rarely, I want to follow an action across Scotland or Ireland. Where are they? Where are these places? And it drives me crazy when this place is a farm, that place is a community, that place is a district, Vivey, and it drives me nuts. And I want to thank you for putting this together. Also, do you have a big problem with sometimes you have the same place name referring to several different places in Scotland?
Yes.
And does that drive you crazy? Or are you usually able to solve that?
It drives me crazy. I'm usually able to take a guess at it, an educated guess, but do I solve it? I may have got it wrong. But yeah, I try.
That's the story of our life, I think, in this field. We do our best. Yeah. I think that most people here, you mentioned Mayfair, most of us would say, well, it's the most expensive one on the Monopoly board.
That's right.
So everybody knows Mayfair.
But I think that's a good starting point to say, okay, what are the places that there was industrial unrest? What are the beautiful places? And that applies to anywhere in the world.
One thing that, John's got his hand up, John Baxter. Hi, John.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you from asking a question, but I'm really pleased that you're using AI, because I want somebody else to use it and solve all the problems for us. But how do you deal with really complex stories? I delved into the history of people hanging monkeys, and whether it was the Badamas that hung the monkey, or whether it was people from Hartlepool.
Hartlepool I've heard of, but yes.
Well, my feeling is it probably was Scottish folklore before it was a song.
Probably.
But how do you, when you've got a complex case like that, if you feed it into AI, what sort of stories do you get out? Don't you get something out that's so messed up you have to suss it all out yourself anyway?
Yeah. Well, no. You get stuff that you can immediately reject as saying that's just utter nonsense. So there's a weather forecaster in the Scottish News. I quite like him. I asked a question about him, and they forwarded me to Ewan McCall's son, who has the same name, and said he's a famous musician. I said, no, he can play the accordion, but he's not that famous. So you use what you know about life, but in the end you say you can't fall out with AI. You say, what is your source? What is your rationale behind saying that? Why do you say it was Hartlepool or Scotland or whatever? Show me a source. And it's just like you and I having an academic discussion. I would need to see a source to be convinced.
Yeah, I agree, but there are so many things where the original sources now are wrong, and things they live on repeatedly by referring to the same bit of information that's wrong, and AI can reinforce that. But sorry, I'm really pleased you're doing it.
Yeah, you're quite right, and of course there's people like me who actually want the monkey hangers to be Scottish, so I might add a bit of bias towards that by questioning.
I think you'll be fine there. They are, as far as I'm concerned, they started in Scotland.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, John, because I was about to seriously suggest that we have a meeting of some sort about AI, because I want to hear from people who have used it. I'm a skeptic, because, as you know, it's based on what's already out there, and if what's already out there is cockeyed, then AI is going to be cockeyed. So if there are people using AI or people just want to dip in and try it, because we don't know until we try it, then let's have a session talking about it and assessing it. Basically, is it useful? Is it not? Or whatever. One of the things that when you first mentioned this, Mike, I said to you that place names in the songs are often there because of the rhyme.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
there was a woman lived in York who fell in love with her father's clerk. Did the clerk come before the York or whatever? The rhythm, you know, as I was going to Salisbury, as I was going to Aylesbury.
Yeah, as many syllables. Yeah.
You know, so sometimes the meaning isn't the meaning of the place name. It's convenient, as it were.
I totally agree. I mean, I talked to a folk club where we translated the Bonnie Lass of Fyvie to the Bonnie Lass of Dundonald, because I'm in Ayrshire now, just round from Robert Burns's birthplace. And so if there's enough syllables and a garrison could have stayed there and soldiers would have lived there and there were bonny lasses round about, you just that's how folk songs develop, isn't it?
Yeah.
If it's not
everywhere in my
experience. Yeah. So if it's not actually a historical event, that's precisely actually what I'm hoping to do, is to spread folk music further by saying, okay, let's make it do what the original people did, the original collectors, the original tellers did, and make it a local song for somebody else.
Two more little points before we finish the meeting. One is, can people write to you and steal your template?
Absolutely.
And use it for their own purposes.
You better wait and find out if I pass the exam first. But yeah,
oh, right, okay.
But yeah, I've made the spreadsheets available, and that's all it is. It's 2 spreadsheets. What you're seeing on the screen is Microsoft SharePoint magic. I don't know how it works. So the spreadsheets are there.
You don't need to know how it works. Just want to
Indeed.
You do.
But the other thing I'd like to point out is to do a plug for Vaughan Williams Memorial Library subject index that they're still building on, they're still working on. Go to their website and you can they've got over 1,000 songs in there now, because we're talking about subjects when we're talking about place names and stuff. It is, I think, a very interesting area, and FDIS, Vaughan Williams are doing their best to cover it, and they need volunteers to index songs. So go to the website and check that.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
All 3 of our speakers. Fascinating stuff today. Thanks to the people who asked questions. Thanks everybody for coming. And we will see you. Well, we might see you in Gloucester in October, or if not, we'll see you here on Zoom on the 16th of November. Thanks for coming. Very well, everybody. Bye-bye.